It started with a sound, one I couldn't explain, coming from the attic at 3 in the morning. And when I went up there, she was already standing there, barefoot, clutching something wrapped in an old army blanket like it might explode. It's strange, the things that wake you up in the middle of the night. Not thunder. Not the baby crying next door. No, what woke me up was silence, too much of it. The kind that presses in on your ears and whispers that something isn't right. I reached over to her side of the bed and found it empty. Again. At first, I figured Claire was downstairs, maybe checking on the dog or scrolling through Zillow listings like she sometimes did when she couldn't sleep, searching for dream homes we'd never buy. But I heard a creak above me. Ceiling. Attic. That's when I sat up. The attic. We hadn't been up there in over a year, not since we moved in. I didn't even remember where the pull-string light was anymore. I threw on a hoodie and padded down the hallway. Our house is a modest 2-story in the suburbs of Asheville, North Carolina. Brick front, squeaky stairs, too many pine trees out back. We bought it just before the pandemic, when the market dipped, thinking we'd finally found our forever home. Back then, Claire smiled more. Back then, we still touched each other without thinking about it. I climbed the ladder slowly. Every step creaked like it might collapse beneath me. The hatch door was already open. And then I saw her. Claire stood in the dusty half-dark, illuminated only by the dim yellow bulb swinging from a frayed wire above her head. Her auburn hair was tied back in a messy knot, her face pale and tense, like she'd been holding her breath for 10 minutes. She didn't look at me right away. Her eyes were locked on the thing in her hands, an old, worn army blanket wrapped tightly around something rectangular. She didn't speak. Just stared. "What are you doing up here?" I asked. She flinched at my voice, like she hadn't heard me come in. "It was making noise," she said quietly. I thought it was mice. But then I saw this box. It was hidden behind the insulation, like someone didn't want it found. Claire is a civil litigation attorney. Calm under pressure. Ruthless in the courtroom. But her fingers trembled as she unwrapped the blanket. Inside was a metal lockbox. One I hadn't seen in over 20 years. Suddenly, I couldn't breathe. I hadn't seen that box since the summer I turned 19, when I left Michigan and everything behind. Including a name that wasn't Daniel Foster. Claire looked up at me, waiting. "Do you know what this is?" I lied. "No idea." She narrowed her eyes. "It's locked." "Do you have a key?" I shook my head. "I've never seen it before." Another lie. She stood there a moment longer, then wrapped the blanket back around the box like she was swaddling a child. "I'm going back to bed," she said, her voice brittle. I watched her descend the ladder without another word. When she was gone, I just stood there, heart pounding, eyes burning from the dust, and from the weight of everything I had buried. That box wasn't supposed to exist anymore. I thought I'd burned it. Inside were letters. Photographs. A birth certificate. Documents from a life I'd abandoned, and people who still knew who I used to be. People who could destroy the life I had built with Claire. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, Claire was acting like nothing happened. She made coffee. She watered the houseplants. She even kissed my cheek, which felt like a trap. That's how Claire fights, quietly, surgically, like a lawyer building a case in secret. I tried to act normal, but everything felt off. The air in the house felt thinner. The walls seemed to lean in. At work, I couldn't concentrate. I manage operations for a local logistics company. I sat at my desk in the corner office staring at spreadsheets that meant nothing. My assistant, Monica, asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. I wasn't tired. I was unraveling. When I got home, Claire was in the kitchen chopping onions like she hated them. Her movements were sharp, deliberate. She didn't ask about my day. She didn't talk at all. Until dinner. She poured herself a glass of red wine, Merlot, her go-to when she was thinking too much, and finally said it. "Who is Matthew Carter?" I nearly dropped my fork. "What?" She didn't blink. I found an envelope in the box. It was addressed to Matthew Carter, in Lansing, Michigan. Postmark 2002. The handwriting looked familiar. My throat tightened. It must have belonged to the previous owners. Claire tilted her head, studying me like I was on a witness stand. Funny. The envelope was sealed inside a letter addressed to my son, Matthew. She didn't need to say it. I knew what she was thinking. She thought I was Matthew. She wasn't wrong. Why would someone hide a letter like that in insulation? She pressed. I had no answer. Or rather, too many. Because the man I used to be died the moment I left Lansing. Because I had to reinvent myself to survive. Because I thought if I built a life far enough away, no one would ever find out what I left behind. But Claire had found it. And she wasn't letting go. I need to know the truth, she said, her voice low but firm. I've lived with you for 8 years. We got married. We bought this house. And I don't even know who you really are. I stood up from the table, barely registering my own movement. I don't know what you think you found, Claire, but... She cut me off. Stop lying. Her words hit harder than I expected. She pushed back from the table and walked away, leaving her plate untouched. I stood alone in the kitchen, still holding my fork, like if I just stayed there long enough, none of this would be real. But it was. And then came the second blow. An hour later, she handed me her phone. No words. Just the screen. It was a message. From someone I hadn't heard from in over 20 years. I know you're still alive, Matt. I need to talk to you. It's about your mother. That's when I realized something. This wasn't just about secrets anymore. This was about everything I thought was dead, coming back to life. And Claire? She wasn't going to stop until she knew everything. Even if it ruined us. It's strange how quickly your own home can turn into a courtroom. Every room becomes an interrogation chamber. Every glance from your wife feels like cross-examination. Every word you say is taken down, mentally recorded, weighed for inconsistency. The message stayed burned into my brain long after Claire stormed out of the room, leaving her phone in my hand like a piece of evidence. I know you're still alive, Matt. I need to talk to you. It's about your mother. The number was unfamiliar. No name, no clue. Just the words. But the fact that they used my old name, Matthew, meant only one thing. Someone from that life was still out there, watching. Waiting. I hadn't been called Matthew Carter in over 2 decades. My legal name changed in 2003, after I moved south and paid a man named Randy $500 and a bottle of scotch for a new ID, birth certificate, and social security card. I became Daniel Foster at 21, and never looked back. Until now. Claire didn't say anything else that night. She took the guest room without a word, didn't even bring her pillow. She was making a point. She always made a point, precisely, surgically, without emotion. She wanted to see if I'd crack. And the truth? I was already cracking. I laid awake for hours, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows over our room. My mind kept returning to the attic box, to the envelope, to the message. I tried to remember who could have sent it. A cousin. An old friend. A ghost from a time I'd buried. And then a darker thought crept in, what if it was my brother? He was the last person who ever called me Matt, the last person I spoke to before I left Lansing. The last person who told me I'd never be able to outrun what happened. I didn't want to go back. Not even in memory. But once those doors open, they don't close quietly. I got out of bed around 3:45 a.m., padded to the kitchen, and poured a finger of whiskey. I hadn't touched hard liquor in months. Claire hated the smell. But she wasn't talking to me now, and I needed something solid to hold on to. That's when I made the mistake of opening the box again. I waited until I knew Claire was asleep. I climbed the attic ladder as quietly as I could, flashlight in hand, every creak of the old steps like a warning. The box was still there, right where she left it. I hesitated only a second before popping the lock open with a screwdriver. I hadn't meant to go back into it, I thought I was done with it forever. But the second the lid opened, the smell hit me, old paper, time, and something faintly sweet, maybe perfume, maybe decay. Inside were things I remembered and things I didn't. The letter to Matthew from someone claiming to be his mother, I remembered that. I never opened it. I was too angry then, too proud. I'd assumed it was just guilt disguised as concern. But I opened it now. The handwriting was loopy, hesitant in places. Some of the words had smeared, probably from moisture. But I could still make out the bulk of it. Matthew. If you're reading this, then you've come back. Or someone found this for you. I want to say I'm sorry, though I know it's not enough. You were right to leave. But there are things you don't know. Things I kept from you because I thought I was protecting you. I realize now I was protecting myself. You always thought your father died when you were 5. But the truth is, he didn't. He left. And not alone. I stopped reading. My fingers trembled. That wasn't possible. I'd spent my whole life believing my father died in a car accident. That's what my mother told me. That's what was on the damn certificate. But if this letter was true... I folded the page and shoved it back inside. My head was pounding. My stomach twisted. I heard footsteps. I turned off the flashlight just as Claire's face appeared at the hatch opening. Her eyes were wide, hollowed out by sleeplessness and fury. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "Why are you reading that in secret?" I tried to steady my voice. I couldn't sleep. "Is that all?" she asked, eyes narrowing. I didn't answer. Claire climbed the ladder slowly, carefully, like she was approaching a bomb. She looked down at the letter in my hand, then back up to me. "You lied to me, Daniel. Or should I say, Matt?" "Don't call me that," I snapped. "Why not?" she said, her voice rising. "It's your name, isn't it?" It was my name. A lifetime ago. Claire crossed her arms. And what else was a lifetime ago? A secret family? A criminal record? Kids I don't know about? That one stung. No. Nothing like that. "Then what, Daniel?" she asked. "What were you running from so badly that you changed your entire identity?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I married, the one I thought I'd been completely honest with. She was a stranger to me now. Or maybe I was the stranger. I was running from the person I used to be, I said. From a house full of lies. From a mother who broke me in ways I still don't understand. I never told you because I didn't want to lose you. Claire was silent for a long time. Her voice came quieter than before. "You already did." Those 3 words hit harder than anything in the letter. I wanted to explain, to beg, to throw myself on the floor if that's what it took. But instead, I just stood there, frozen. She turned to go, her foot slipping slightly on the ladder rung. I reached to steady her, and for a second, her fingers gripped mine. But then she pulled away. That night, I slept on the couch. The dog curled up beside me, as if trying to comfort the man who'd just detonated his own life. The next morning, Claire was gone. No note, no call. Just an empty house. I called her twice. Straight to voicemail. I texted, "We need to talk." Nothing. At 11:17 a.m., I got another message. This time from the same number that had texted me the night before. "We need to meet. This isn't just about you. There's something else. Something she doesn't know either." She. Claire? Or someone else? Attached was a location. A coffee shop in downtown Asheville. My hands were shaking when I grabbed my keys. I knew I should tell Claire. I should be transparent now. But something told me this meeting wasn't just about the past. It was about a new secret. One I hadn't even discovered yet. The GPS guided me to a little cafe wedged between a used bookstore and an overpriced pottery shop on Lexington Avenue in Asheville's downtown. It was the kind of place Claire would have dragged me to on a lazy Sunday morning, insisting we just stop in for coffee and pastries before a long, silent walk through antique stores. But Claire was gone, and I was here, not for croissants or memories, but for something darker, answers. I parked across the street, shut off the engine, and just sat there for a moment, watching the front window. I scanned the cafe's interior, looking for anything familiar. No one stood out. Mostly students with laptops and older couples sharing quiet meals. But then I saw her, sitting alone in the back, tucked into a booth like she was trying not to exist. She looked about 30, maybe younger, but carried herself with the weight of someone twice her age. Pale skin, nervous fingers drumming against a coffee cup, a beat-up leather bag on the table like a piece of armor. When she looked up and saw me, she flinched. I didn't recognize her. But she knew me. I took a breath, got out of the car, and crossed the street like a man walking toward his own trial. When I slid into the booth across from her, she looked even more nervous up close. Eyes flicking to the door, then back to me. She said nothing at first, just stared. "You're the one who sent the message," I said quietly. "You called me Matt." Her voice cracked when she spoke. "That's who you were." "Right." I nodded. "Who are you?" She hesitated. "My name is Lila." It meant nothing to me. No spark of memory. Just a name. I waited for more. She reached into her bag and pulled out a worn photograph. She slid it across the table with trembling fingers. I picked it up. It hit me like a body blow. It was me, 15 years old, standing in front of my childhood home in Lansing, Michigan. My brother, Aaron, was beside me, arms slung around my shoulder. And in front of us, kneeling, was a little girl, maybe 5. Long dark hair, wide eyes. I remembered the day the picture was taken, mostly because it was the day I ran away for the first time. But I didn't remember the girl. "Who is she?" I asked. Lila stared at me. Me. I stared back, not understanding. She leaned in, lowering her voice. "Matt. I'm your sister." The cafe disappeared. The air sucked out of the room. I blinked at her like I was trying to focus on something underwater. "That's not possible," I said. She nodded. I didn't think so either. Not until I found the letters. The photos. The truth. "No," I said again. "My mom never had another kid after Aaron and me." "She did," Lila said softly. "She just didn't tell anyone." The words hit harder than they should have. Because even as I wanted to deny it, refuse it outright, something in me stirred. Something old and buried. "I was born in 1994, Lila said. "You'd already left by then." "You were what, 18? 19, I muttered. She nodded. "She put me in foster care 6 months later. Said she couldn't raise a third child. That she was sick. That she'd already lost one son to the past." My hands curled into fists beneath the table. "She gave you away." Lila nodded slowly. "And never came back." My heart pounded. This couldn't be true. It shouldn't be true. But the dates lined up. And if my mother really did lie about my father's death, what else had she lied about? "Why now?" I asked, voice raw. "Why reach out after all these years?" Lila hesitated. "Because I found something. Something you need to see. And because you're not the only one with a wife who deserves the truth." I blinked. "You've talked to Claire?" "No," she said quickly. "But I know about her. I know about your life. I've been following you for months." My blood ran cold. "Excuse me." "Not in a creepy way," she said, her voice pleading. I wanted to make sure you were really who I thought you were before I reached out. You changed your name. It took me a long time to trace it all back. DMV records. Old aliases. You were buried deep, Matt." "Don't call me that," I said automatically. But my voice lacked force. She pulled something else from her bag, a manila folder, thick with documents, photos, even what looked like newspaper clippings. She slid it across the table. "I don't expect you to believe me today," she said. "But read these. Then decide if you still want to ignore what she did to both of us." I stared at the folder like it was poison. Part of me wanted to grab it and walk out. Another part, the part one thought I'd killed years ago, was desperate to know. Lila stood. "I'll be at the Red Roof in Off Tunnel Road. Room 214. For the next 2 nights. After that." I go back to Philadelphia. Whether you come or not. She looked at me one last time, and I saw it in her eyes, something that didn't belong to a stranger. A familiar pain. A familiar hunger to be known. And then she left. I sat there for another hour, sipping cold coffee and staring at the folder without opening it. My mind raced. My mother hadn't just lied, she'd rewritten history. My wife had just found out I was someone else. And now a half-sister I never knew existed had dropped into my life with a bag full of proof and a storm behind her eyes. I finally left the cafe, folder tucked under my arm like a stolen file. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Claire. My breath caught in my chest. Her message was short. We need to talk. I'm at your mother's house. I froze. My mother's house. But my mother had died 5 years ago. Or at least, I thought she had. I didn't drive straight to the house. I should have. But I didn't. Instead, I parked at a gas station on the edge of Asheville, hands gripping the steering wheel like I was trying to anchor myself to the present moment. My mind kept looping Claire's text. We need to talk. I'm at your mother's house. I hadn't been to that place in nearly 5 years, not since the funeral. As far as I knew, the house had been sold. Cleaned out. Locked away in the past. And now Claire was there. At a house that shouldn't be hers. Or mine. Or anyone's. I opened the manila folder Lila had given me, right there in the car, needing something, anything, to ground me before I faced whatever was waiting at that house. Inside were pages yellowed with time. Photocopies of handwritten letters, some from my mother to someone named Denise. Some addressed to M. None of them made full sense out of context, but one phrase kept repeating. He can never know what happened that night. I turned the page. Newspaper clippings. One dated August 1994. Local woman gives up infant to state, cites mental health crisis. No names. Just anonymous despair in black and white. Then photos. My mother, younger than I'd ever seen her. Holding a baby girl. Another photo, me and Aaron on the porch. And in the corner of one, almost hidden, what looked like a man, face half obscured in shadow. I stared at it. Something about him, the posture. The shape of his chin. It looked like me. But I knew it wasn't. I slammed the folder shut. I couldn't think clearly anymore. I just needed to get to Claire. I pulled out of the lot and headed north, toward the old neighborhood, toward a house I'd spent my whole life trying to forget. It was dusk by the time I pulled up. The street was still the same, lined with tired maples and crooked fences. Kids' bikes lying in driveways. The whir of lawn sprinklers in the distance. And there it was, 244 Harvest Lane. My childhood home. It hadn't been sold after all. Claire's car was in the driveway. I got out, heart pounding. I half expected the house to vanish if I blinked too hard. But it was still there, looming like a secret too big to burn. The front door was slightly ajar. Claire. I called out. No answer. I stepped inside. Everything was frozen in time. The same worn carpet. The dusty bookshelf that still leaned slightly to the right. The wallpaper with faded sunflowers. And the smell, old perfume and mothballs and something older. Something like grief. I walked slowly through the hallway, past the kitchen, into the living room. Claire was standing in front of the fireplace, holding something in her hands. She turned when she heard me. There were no tears in her eyes. No rage. Just quiet devastation. You lied to me, she said. My throat tightened. Claire, I can explain. She held up the object in her hand. A photograph. Another one of those I hadn't seen in years. It was me. 17 years old, bruised and bloodied. A black eye. Split lip. Standing outside the police station. I swallowed hard. Where did you find that? She didn't answer. I didn't mean to keep that part of my life from you. I just. You didn't mean to, she snapped, her voice rising. Matt, or David, or whatever your name is, I don't even know who you are anymore. I stepped closer. Please. I didn't know how to tell you. You told me your father died in a fire when you were 10. He did. You told me your mother died 5 years ago. She did. She walked to the window, her voice cold. Then why did the neighbor say she saw her just last month? What? The woman next door, she said. She said she saw your mother unloading groceries. Same hair. Same voice. Same car. I felt like the floor was slipping out from under me. That's not possible. Claire turned, eyes hard. Unless she never died. The silence between us stretched. I felt the sting of betrayal, only it wasn't directed at her. It was at myself. At my mother. At whatever dark machinery she'd set in motion behind my back. I buried her, I said quietly. I went to the funeral. I stood over her grave. Claire shook her head. I checked. The death certificate was filed late. There's no hospital record. And the casket was sealed. My blood went cold. She crossed her arms. So tell me the truth. Who the hell was in that coffin? I couldn't answer her. My chest was heaving now. I turned away, walking into the hallway like the walls were going to start whispering the truth. I climbed the stairs 2 at a time, threw open the attic door, and pulled the cord. The ladder groaned as it came down. Claire followed silently. We climbed together. The attic was just as she described, boxes stacked like tombstones, dust dancing in the thin shaft of evening light. I found it behind the insulation, she whispered. I turned. What? She walked to the far corner, knelt, and pulled aside a section of fiberglass. Behind it, hidden in the beams, was a small wooden chest. I opened it. Inside, an old revolver. A baby bracelet. A stack of cash. And a torn letter. I unfolded it with shaking hands. If he ever comes looking, tell him he left us first. That it was his choice. That he doesn't get to come back now. Tell him the girl died. Tell him anything. But never let him near her again. It was signed with just one initial, E. Who's E? Claire asked. I stared at the letter, barely breathing. And then it hit me. Not E for Elizabeth, my mother. E for Eleanor. My aunt. My mother's twin sister. I hadn't seen her since I was a teenager. They'd had a falling out, something about money and secrets and God knows what else. And then the thought struck like lightning. What if it wasn't my mother who died 5 years ago? What if it was Eleanor? And what if, just maybe, my mother had taken her place? Downstairs, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She's not who you think she is. Neither am I. Come alone. Midnight. The river cabin. The drive to the river cabin felt like a fever dream. I don't even remember the turns I took to get there, only that I obeyed every red light like it was a moral decision, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles and replaying that text over and over again in my head. She's not who you think she is. Neither am I. Come alone. Midnight. The river cabin. The phrase kept looping, neither am I. What the hell did that mean? I hadn't been to the river cabin in over 2 decades. It was a place my family used to retreat to during summers, back before the silence set in, before the lies became routine. My mother used to pack cold chicken and peaches and read on the porch swing while Aaron and I swam in the river until our fingers shriveled. But after my dad died, she never went back. Claimed it brought up too many memories. Or maybe she was afraid of what we'd remember. By the time I pulled onto the overgrown gravel path that led to the cabin, it was 5 minutes to midnight. Crickets buzzed so loud they felt like static in my ears. The moon hung low and red, and the windows of the cabin were dark. But the porch light was on. I got out of the car and stood there for a moment, just breathing. Just trying to convince myself I hadn't completely lost my mind. I walked slowly up the porch steps, heart pounding in my throat. The front door creaked open before I could knock. And there she was. My mother. Or at least, the woman I had buried 5 years ago. She looked older, thinner, and yet, the same. Same eyes. Same wary smile. But it wasn't warm. It wasn't motherly. It was calculating. Careful. "Hello, Matthew," she said, like we'd spoken yesterday. I stared at her, the words catching in my throat. "I saw you die." She stepped aside to let me in. "No, you saw a body in a box. There's a difference." The room hadn't changed since I was a kid. The same plaid armchairs. The worn carpet. The scent of river water and cedar. But the air between us was dense, thick with years of deception I couldn't even begin to parse. I sat down slowly. She didn't. "Start talking," I said. My voice was low, foreign even to me. She folded her arms. "You remember Eleanor? Your sister." "My twin," she corrected. "Identical in every way but one, she never could lie as well as I could." I looked at her. "It was her in that coffin, wasn't it?" A nod. "Why?" I asked. "Why fake your death? Why disappear?" She let out a breath, one that trembled just slightly at the edges. "You remember the night your father died?" I nodded slowly. I remembered it every night in my sleep. Fire. Screams. The smell of gasoline. She sat across from me, for the first time looking human. Tired. "You were 10. You believed what we told you, that it was an accident. That the stove blew." I felt the chill creep into my spine. "But it wasn't, was it?" She looked at me then, really looked. And there was something devastating behind her eyes. "No. It wasn't." I couldn't move. Could barely breathe. "I didn't kill him," she said quickly, anticipating the question. But I didn't stop it either. I knew Eleanor was going to confront him that night. I knew she was unraveling. I knew what he did to her. The air left my lungs. "What did he do?" She looked down. "Your father wasn't a good man, Matthew. Not to me. Not to her. Not to anyone. But he knew how to hide it. He was charming in that slick, Southern boy way. But behind closed doors, he was dangerous." I felt the rage rising. I'd spent so many years idolizing a ghost. She went on, quieter now. "Eleanor loved him. At first. Or thought she did. Until he turned on her, too. She came to me crying one night, said he hurt her. Said he forced himself on her. And that she was pregnant." My whole body went cold. "Pregnant?" I stood up. "Are you saying he?" She nodded. "The baby. A girl. She gave her up. Said she couldn't bear to look at something that reminded her of him." I staggered back. Everything was spinning. Claire. The photos. The letter. The girl in the photos. That girl was my sister. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "I don't know. We were told she went into foster care, but Eleanor, she never stopped looking. When she came back into my life a few years ago, she was obsessed. Convinced she had found her. She said the girl was in Asheville. Working at some art gallery." I swallowed hard. My mind immediately jumped to the name on the gallery invoice Claire had found in the attic, Avery Nash. "Did Eleanor find her?" I asked. "She thought she did. She called me the night before she died. Said she was going to see her. Said she was going to tell her the truth. But she died the next day." "Yes." My mother's voice cracked, just barely. "She called it an accident. But I always suspected, someone didn't want the truth to come out." "And you faked your death?" She nodded. "I didn't know who was watching. I needed time. Distance. I needed to keep you safe. I thought if I stayed dead, no one would come looking for me, or for you." I turned away, trying to make sense of the mess unraveling in front of me. So Avery Nash, she might be my sister. She might be. Or she might be someone Eleanor desperately wanted to believe was her daughter. I never met her. I stayed away, like I promised. I sat back down, dizzy. "Claire knows some of this," I muttered. "Not all. But enough to start asking questions." You shouldn't have brought her here, my mother said. If she digs too deep, she could get hurt. I stared at her. Hurt by who? My mother looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something close to fear in her eyes. I don't know. But someone didn't want Eleanor finding the girl. And they might not want you finding her either. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was from Claire. Matt, I found Avery. She agreed to talk. We're meeting tomorrow at 11 at the cafe near the gallery. Please be there. I looked up. Then it's time, I said. We find out the truth. I left the cabin an hour later. My mother stayed behind. Said she would be gone before sunrise. Said she couldn't risk being seen. As I drove back through the dark, a strange calm settled over me. Like the storm wasn't over, but I could finally see it coming. And yet, a single question kept eating away at me. If Eleanor's death wasn't an accident, who killed her? And more importantly, who still wanted the past to stay buried? There's a strange thing that happens when your whole world collapses in slow motion. Your brain starts recording everything. Every smell, every flicker of light, every half-heard conversation, it all gets filed away like evidence at a crime scene, waiting to be analyzed. By the time I arrived at the cafe the next morning, I was already scanning every corner like I was stepping into a trap. Claire was sitting alone at a table by the window, a cup of untouched coffee in front of her, nervously twisting her wedding ring on her finger. When she saw me, her eyes lit up with something between relief and accusation. You came, she said quietly as I slid into the seat across from her. I always do, I said, but the words tasted bitter. There was too much between us now, things we hadn't said, things we couldn't unsay. Still, I tried to sound calm. I looked around. Where is she? Claire leaned forward. She's in the restroom. Her name really is Avery. Avery Nash. She runs an art restoration program for foster youth. Matt, she looks just like you. My throat tightened. Like me. She has your eyes. Your posture. The same way you furrow your brow when you're thinking. I noticed it the second she walked in. She's nervous, she doesn't know the whole story yet. Just then, the bathroom door creaked open. And there she was. Avery. She was in her mid-20s. Curly dark hair, tall, with the kind of wary expression that told me she didn't trust the world, and had every reason not to. As she sat down, I could barely speak. Hi, she said softly. You're Matthew. I nodded, unable to form words. She studied me for a second, then offered a tense smile. You look like someone I used to see in the mirror. I smiled, but it was tight. You don't remember anything? From before you were adopted? Avery shook her head. Not really. Just a lot of shadows. I was told I was left at a fire station. They didn't even have a birth certificate. Claire leaned in gently. What about a name? They wrote down Baby E. That's all. I felt something shift inside me, like a tectonic plate cracking. E, for Eleanor. Avery looked down, unsure. Claire pulled something from her bag, one of the old black and white photos from the attic. Do you recognize this woman? Avery took the photo, studied it. That's her, she whispered. That's the woman who came to see me 2 years ago. She didn't say much, just gave me this locket and told me I deserved the truth. She reached into her purse and pulled out a tiny heart-shaped locket, setting it on the table. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a photo of Eleanor, and a slip of paper with a date scrawled in faded ink, June 12, 1998. The day Avery was born. I exhaled shakily. She was your mother. Avery blinked fast. So, are we? I nodded. Half-siblings. I think. My father, our father, hurt a lot of people. My mother said Eleanor gave you up to protect you. Avery leaned back, arms crossed. That woman who visited me, she looked like this photo. Are you saying she's dead? I looked her in the eyes. She was found dead a week after she visited you. They said it was an accident, but I'm not so sure anymore. Avery's hands shook slightly. Why now? Why are you just telling me this? I swallowed hard. Because the people who wanted the secret buried might still be watching. And I think you're in danger. Suddenly, Claire's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and her face drained of color. She handed it to me. It was a text from an unknown number. Stop digging. She's not your family. Walk away, or you'll be next. Attached was a grainy photo. It was us. Sitting at this very table. My blood went ice cold. They're watching us, I said under my breath. I stood up and pulled out a few bills for the coffee. We need to go. Now. We left through the back entrance and ducked into my car. Avery sat in the back, clutching her purse like a life raft. We drove in tense silence for a few minutes before Claire finally spoke. This isn't just about Avery, is it? I nodded. It's about Eleanor. Someone killed her to keep her quiet. Avery's voice trembled. Do you think it was someone in your family? I don't know, I said truthfully. But I think it's someone who was close to my father. Someone who knew what he did. Suddenly, a thought hit me like a freight train. Aaron. My older brother. The golden boy. The protector. The one who always said Eleanor was unstable and needed to stay in the past. The one who handled all the funeral arrangements and pushed for cremation. Why had I never questioned that before? Claire, I said sharply, do you still have that estate file from the attic? The one with Dad's will. She nodded slowly. Yeah, I scanned the whole thing. It's on my laptop. Pull it up. A few minutes later, we were parked outside our house, and she opened the file on her screen. I scrolled through legal documents and property transfers until I found it, a handwritten letter from my father to Aaron. Dated 6 months before his death. The contents made my skin crawl. Aaron, if anything happens to me, you know what to do. Keep the girl away from the family. She's dangerous. A mistake. Our mistake. Make sure Eleanor never finds her. Use the trust fund if you have to. Burn this letter. I read it 3 times before I could speak. Avery looked sick. Claire looked horrified. And me? I felt betrayed in a way I didn't know was possible. Aaron knew. He'd known all along. And he'd done everything he could to keep the truth buried. Suddenly, a memory slammed into me, of Aaron arguing with my mom late at night, back when I was just a kid. I couldn't hear what they were saying, only that she'd yelled, "You don't get to decide who lives or dies." I thought it was about Dad. But now I wasn't so sure. Claire touched my arm. Matt, what are you going to do? I looked at her, then at Avery. I'm going to confront him, I said. Avery's voice cracked. Are you sure that's safe? No, I said. But it's necessary. I turned to Claire. I need you to take Avery somewhere safe. Somewhere nobody knows. She hesitated. What about you? I'll be fine. I wasn't sure I believed it. But I had to try. Because this wasn't just about secrets anymore. This was about justice. And about finally putting an end to the lies that had haunted our family for decades. As I walked back to my car, I dialed Aaron's number. He picked up on the second ring. Matt, he said, voice tight. We need to talk, I said. There was a pause. Where? I looked out across the darkening sky. The river cabin. Tonight. Come alone. His voice was careful. Why there? Because that's where this all started, I said. And that's where it ends. The river cabin looked just like it had 20 years ago. Peeling red paint on the shutters, a rusted grill on the back porch, the same warped front steps we used to trip over when we were kids. It sat at the edge of the water like a forgotten relic, swallowed up by pine trees and silence. Nothing had changed, except me. I sat inside with the lights off, watching headlights wind down the gravel road through the trees. My hands were shaking. Whether it was from the cold, fear, or fury, I couldn't tell. Probably all 3. Aaron's car pulled up slow. I saw him pause before getting out, his tall frame silhouetted by the open door, the cabin light casting long shadows behind him. He stepped inside like he owned the place. Could have picked somewhere less dramatic, he muttered, brushing snow off his coat. You wanted to control the story, I said, rising. So I brought you back to where it started. Aaron closed the door behind him. I take it this isn't just a family reunion. No, I said. It's not. He looked older than I remembered, more tired around the eyes. But his posture was still the same, confident, in charge, just like when we were kids and he was always the one who got to choose what game we played and how it ended. I tossed the printed copy of the letter from Dad on the table. Aaron stared at it for a moment before slowly sitting down. You weren't supposed to see that, he said. My voice came out low, bitter. No kidding. He rubbed his temples, like the weight of years had suddenly landed on his shoulders. Look, Matt, you don't understand what was happening back then. Dad was unraveling. Eleanor was threatening to go public. The media, the board, the company, it would have destroyed everything. So you kept her quiet. Aaron flinched. I didn't kill her. But you knew who did. Silence. Long, awful silence. Finally, he exhaled. She wasn't stable, Matt. She'd been in and out of rehab, mental health facilities. She showed up one night, drunk, talking about how you were Avery's real father. My whole body went cold. What? Aaron met my eyes. You were 16. You don't remember. But Eleanor, she was obsessed with you. She used to sneak into the house when Mom and Dad were away. You thought she was just babysitting. I shook my head violently. No. No. That's not possible. I didn't believe it either. But Dad, he lost it when she told him. That's why he kept her away from you. That's why he gave the baby up. I stumbled back, like I'd been hit. Avery. My half-sister, or my daughter. My stomach churned. You're lying, I whispered. Aaron's voice was oddly gentle. I wish I was. I turned away, gripping the edge of the table, trying not to throw up. She found Avery 2 years ago, I said. Tried to reconnect. Someone followed her. Killed her. And now someone's threatening Avery again. Aaron nodded slowly. I know. You know. I had her followed, he said. To make sure she didn't talk. She was slipping, Matt. Saying things to the press. Looking into the adoption records. I tried to scare her off. You tried to control her. Just like Dad. Aaron's voice sharpened. I tried to protect you. You don't get to say that. I shouted, spinning toward him. You kept my life from me. You hid a child, a woman, who might be my own daughter. And now you expect me to thank you for burying it. He looked tired again. What was I supposed to do? Let the family name burn. Let Mom fall apart. Let you drop out of school and become some teenage father to a baby you didn't even know existed. Yes. I roared. You should have told me the truth. You should have let me decide. Aaron stood. And what if she is your daughter? What then, Matt? You going to rewind time and be her dad? Fix 27 years of damage with an apology and a family dinner? I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. I'd spent the last 2 days falling into a hole that had no bottom, chasing ghosts, decoding lies, clinging to the hope that there was still something good left at the core of my family. But maybe there wasn't. Maybe all that was left were splinters and guilt. And a woman who didn't even know who she was. I looked at Aaron one last time. She deserves the truth, I said. Not your version. Not Dad's. The real one. Aaron nodded slowly, like he already knew this moment was coming. He reached into his coat and slid a USB drive across the table. What's this? I asked. Everything, he said. The security footage from the night Eleanor died. Her medical records. The real adoption papers. Dad's private notes. You'll see for yourself. Why now? I asked. Because I'm tired, he said. And because maybe it's time someone finally told the truth in this family. I didn't thank him. I couldn't. He left without another word. I stayed in that cabin for an hour, staring at the USB drive like it was a loaded gun. Then I drove home, not even knowing what I'd say to Claire when I got there. But when I walked in, she was waiting with Avery. Avery looked up, eyes red, hands clenched in her lap. "I want to know everything," she said softly. I nodded, sitting across from her. "You will. But I have to tell you something first. And it might change everything." She nodded. I told her what Aaron said. About Eleanor. About the possibility. She didn't speak. Just sat there, breathing hard. After a long silence, she asked, "Do you think it's true?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But if you're willing, I want to find out. Together." She didn't cry. She just reached across the table and took my hand. It was the first time she'd touched me. And somehow, that quiet gesture, after everything, broke me more than all the yelling and revelations and secrets combined. In the weeks that followed, we took the DNA tests. Waited. Tried to be something close to human again. The results came back. She wasn't my daughter. She was my sister. Half-sister. Relief and grief hit me at the same time, twisting around each other like barbed wire. Claire and I didn't have some magical reconciliation. We fought. We cried. We yelled about everything, her jealousy, my secrets, our trust. But something cracked open between us that night. Something real. And Avery. She started coming around more. We sat on the porch sometimes, drinking coffee, going through old boxes, trying to make sense of a life neither of us asked for. Sometimes we found pictures of Eleanor, and she'd go quiet. But she never looked away. She said she wanted to keep the locket. Said it reminded her that even people who disappear still leave echoes. And me. I stopped searching for some perfect version of the truth. Because truth doesn't come all at once. It comes in pieces, jagged, painful, beautiful, and if you're lucky, you get to hold them in your hands long enough to make peace with them. I still drive by the cabin sometimes. And every now and then, I imagine Eleanor standing there at the edge of the river, hair in the wind, holding a baby she didn't want to lose. She didn't run. She protected her. She protected me. And now it's my turn. To protect what's left. And to stop the cycle, before it swallows the next generation whole.